Welcome, Vintage Hollywood Archive. Peter Finch is best recalled for his role as crazed TV anchorman Howard Beale in the movie Network, which won him a posthumous Academy Award for Best Actor, his 5th Best Actor Award from the BAFTA, British Academy of Film and Television Arts, and a Best Actor Award from the Golden Globes. Finch was the first of 2 people to win a posthumous Academy Award in the acting category. What made Peter Finch win awards one after another? Make sure to watch the video until the end, and if you are new here, don't forget to join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Vintage Hollywood Archive. Peter Finch, a never-dying star of Hollywood. The first actor to win posthumous Oscar. The high hairline and the hooded eyes carried a careful intelligence with which Finch responded to the world of the film. Often, Finch's role was contrary to showy. He just appeared to fit. There was no effort. His acting often involved waiting for something to occur. But when he exploded into anger or love, it was overwhelming. He was an iceberg of acting, with so much beneath the surface. It's occasional to find such complexity, and he used it to get great influence in films that demanded more from the audience than just their attention. For his best recognized roles, in brave movies such as Sunday Bloody Sunday and Network, Finch wasn't the first choice of their directors. But once he occupied a character, it belonged to him forever. He had a sense of familiarity in his acting, as if he naturally bounced from the setting. Whether it was the Dorset scenery, an American television station, the Arctic Circle, or a Malayan POW camp. According to film historian David Shipman, Mr. Finch's first significant movie act came opposite Cecile Kellaway in the Australian production in 1938, Mr. Chedworth Steps Out. Peter Finch worked with the Australian Army during World War II in the Middle East and later formed a stage group of Allied servicemen named Finch's Follies. Going back to Australia to continue his acting career, Finch became perhaps the best-known radio joker in the country after founding a troupe patterned and named after Orson Welles' Mercury Theatre Players. While Finch is mostly recalled for his many movie roles, few realize that his initial career included radio drama. His international career started after he was discovered by Laurence Olivier and Vivien Leigh during their renowned tour of Australia in 1948. However, Finch had an extremely successful career all over the 1960s and 1970s, winning BAFTA awards for his acting in The Trials of Oscar Wilde in 1960, in a title role, No Love for Johnny in 1961, and Sunday Bloody Sunday in 1971. His performance in the last one also earned him an Academy Award nominee for Best Actor in a Leading Role. Peter Finch was born on 28 September 1916 as Frederick George Peter Ingle Finch in London to Alicia Gladys Fisher. At the time, George Finch was married to Alicia. George was born in New South Wales, Australia, but got an education in Paris and Zurich. He was an investigation chemist when he went to Britain in 1912, and later worked during the First World War with the Royal Field Artillery and the Royal Army Ordnance Depot. At Portsmouth, Hampshire in 1915, George married Alicia Fisher. She was daughter of a Kent barrister. However, George was not Peter Finch's father by birth. He learned only in his mid-40s that his father was Wentworth Edward Dallas Jock Campbell, who was an Indian Army officer, whose disloyalty with Finch's mother was the reason of George and Alicia's divorce when Finch was 2 years old. In 1922, Alicia Finch married Jock Campbell. George got custody of Finch, and he was taken from Alicia and brought up by his grandmother, Laura Finch. In 1925, Laura took Finch with her to Adyar, a theosophical society near Madras, India, for a few months, and the young Finch lived for a time in a Buddhist hermitage. Unfortunately, as a result of his childhood interaction with Buddhism, Finch claimed to be a Buddhist. In 1926, he went to Australia to live with his uncle, Edward Herbert Finch, at Greenwich Point, Sydney. He joined the local public school in 1929, and after that, he attended the North Sydney Intermediate High School for 3 years. After graduating, Finch began to work as a copy boy for the Sydney Sun and started writing. However, he was more fascinated by acting, and in late 1933, performed in a play, Caprice, at the Repertory Theatre. He began performing in stage shows for Doris Fitton, acted as a sideshow spruiker at the Sydney Royal Easter Show, in the show with Joe Cody, and as a halt to American comedian Burt LeBlanc. At age 19, Peter Finch explored Australia with George Sorley's traveling group. He later excelled with Neva Carr-Glynn in an extremely popular series by Max Afford as husband and wife investigators Jeffrey and Elizabeth Blackburn, as well as for other ABC radio shows. Finch's first screen act was in a 1935 short film, The Magic Shoes, a variation of the fairy tale Cinderella. He completed his feature film debut in 1938 with a secondary role in Dad and Dave Come to Town for Kent G. Hall, his director, who went on to cast Finch in a bigger role assisting Cecile Kellaway in Mr. Chedworth Steps Out, 1939. He was recruited into the Australian Army in 1941. He served for World War II in the Middle East and was an anti-aircraft soldier during the bombing of Darwin. He directed While the Sun Shines and French Without Tears. He quitted the Army in 1945 at the rank of sergeant. After the war, Finch sustained to work greatly in radio and recognized himself as Australia's leading actor in that medium, winning 2 Marquee Awards for Best Actor in 1946 and 1947. He also worked as a writer, producer, and comparer. In 1946, Finch co-founded the Mercury Theatre Company in Sweden, which put on a lot of productions over the next few years, as well as organized a theatre school. A 1948 performance of The Imaginary Invalid on the floor of O'Brien's Glass Factory in Sydney carried him to the attention of Vivien Leigh and Laurence Olivier, and then with the Old Vic Company toured Australia. Oliver encouraged Peter Finch to move to London, and then he left Australia in 1948. When he reached Britain, Oliver became his advisor and put him in a long-term contract. His first big great opportunity was being cast in James Brady's stage play Daphne Loriola at the Old Vic along with Edith Evans. He also received praises for his role in a British film, Trains of Events, 1949, playing a brutal actor. Critic C.A. Lejeune acclaimed his work, saying, "He adds good cheekbones to a quick intelligence and is likely to become a cult, I fear." The Scotsman said, he should be regarded as one of the most hopeful recruits to the British screen. His role as a Pole in Daphne Loriola headed to his casting as a Polish warrior in The Miniver Story, the sequel to the wartime optimism-boosting film Mrs. Miniver. Unlike its forerunner, it was poorly received unfavorably. The same year, he also performed in the more successful The Wooden Horse, playing an Australian jailbird of war. During this time, Finch's intimacy with the Oliver led to an affair with Oliver's wife, but increasingly unstable beauty, Vivien Leigh, which began in 1948, and the affair continued for several years, eventually falling apart due to her worsening medical condition. After all, Vivien was Lady Oliver. It was all too tense for Peter, too. He went on to A Town Called Alice, and finally, his own Oscar, Posthumous, a category first, in 1977. By then, the shutter had long fallen on the flimsy beauty that had been Vivien Leigh. His roles increased in size, number, and prestige, plus being cast as the villain Flambeau in Father Brown, 1954, and as the leading actor in the Hollywood film Elephant Walk, 1954. By the end of 1954, Finch's agreement with Laurence Olivier was about to terminate, and he instead signed a 7-year agreement with the Rank Organization, worth £87,500, to make 1 movie a year for them. "We are going to build Peter into a major British star," said Earl St. John, Rank's crown of production at that time. However, in 1956, he acted in 2 major hits, A Town Like Alice, 1956, and The Battle of the River Plate, 1956. Which saw exhibitors elect him the 7th most famous British star at the box office. The next year, his ranking went up to 3rd most popular star, being the 5th most popular regardless of nationality. He went back to Australia to make 2 movies, Robbery Under Arms, 1957, and The Shirley, 1957. The success of The Nun Story, 1959, saw Peter Finch become an international star, although he never performed in Hollywood for a prolonged period, favoring basing himself in London. He was doing a tour for the promotion of the 1976 film Network, in which he acted as the TV anchorman Howard Bale, who develops messianic pretenses. He was the nominations for a Best Actor Oscar for that act, and posthumously won the award, which was received by his widow, Aletha Finch. Although Massimo Troisi, Spencer Tracy, and James Dean were also nominated posthumously for a Best Actor Oscar, Peter Finch was the first actor to win the award, as well as the first Australian performer to win a Best Actor award. Finch also won 5 Best Actor awards from the British Academy of Film and Television Arts, which there was 1 for Network. All good things come to those who wait. Peter Finch comes among the luckiest actors of that time, who became very popular internationally and won several awards. Finch was, however, possibly best known for his representation as Howard Beale in his last theatrical film, Network, 1976. His bright portrait of the unbalanced TV newscaster who cries, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore," won him an Academy Award. In a successful run, Breaking Bad star Bryan Cranston is presently at the National Theatre repeating Peter Finch's career-defining act in the 1976 movie Network. So it's perfect timing for stage directors to be playing a play about the snobbery, prejudice, and racism that resolute Finch's third marriage and led to his mad-as-hell upsurge. He was endured by his fourth wife, a past Jamaican beauty shop worker, Eltha Barrett, and their 9-year-old daughter Diana, and 3 grown-up children all residing in Europe from former marriages. Mad as Hell is the yet untold story of Peter Finch's Jamaican wife, Eltha Barrett. While on a holiday in the 1960s, Finch met Barrett in a bar, where Barrett was a dancer. They wed in 1973. Jamaican-born Farlane said, "In the 1970s, Jamaica was very stratified and many felt she was from the wrong class. It caused a huge scandal. I've wanted to tell the story for years as the issues around race and class remain relevant. We gave up our careers to do this, so we feel like 18-year-olds getting our first break," said Hope. He gave one of the most striking performances of his career in the act of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in the movie Raid on Entebbe. There is a diverse, iconic chance that Mr. Finch could receive the Best Acting Awards for both the Television Academies and Motion Picture within the coming few months. According to Brian McFarlane in The Encyclopedia of British Film, hosted by British Film Institute's Screen Online, Finch did not emerge unscathed from a life of well-publicized hell-raising, and several biographies chronicle the affairs and the booze. But a serious appraisal of a great actor remains to be written. Finch made it possible to work in more than 50 successful films in a career of fewer than 4 decades. His filmography is full of hit after hit, with several awards and nominations. Finch was a good husband and affectionate father. There were no personal scandals related to Finch except for his affair with Vivian. Finch took ever more perplexing roles and worked with some of the superhit directors of the 60s and 70s, such as Sidney Lumet, John Schlesinger, and Fred Zinman. His last performance was in Lumet's Network. Peter Finch was named by his friends and colleagues as Finchy, and he was modest and unbothered by the trappings of reputation. For him, acting and performing were everything. He said, "Good acting should teach people to understand rather than judge," and that was accurately what he accomplished in his best roles. His roles weren't always pleasant, but you could appreciate them, no matter where or when they lived. He made them existent. In the last days of his life, he was focusing on his last film, Network. He didn't have any serious ailment, but unfortunately, he died at the age of 60 only. The reason was sudden and severe. His death shocked all of his fans, family, directors, and colleagues all of a sudden. After a severe heart attack on the porch of the Beverly Hills Hotel, Peter Finch died on 14th January 1977 at the age of 60. He is buried in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. For every actor, it is a dream to win Oscar, and Finch was one of the hardest working actors and radio jokers who won Oscar and nominations too. He is still alive in his acts that are still watched with keenness. Finch is a never-dying star of Hollywood. I wonder how many of you were surprised by Peter Finch and Vivien Leigh's affair. Nothing proves better how Vivien Leigh and Laurence Oliver's relationship really was. Watch this video if you want to know why Vivien Leigh had the most tragic love story in Hollywood history.